Hello and welcome to another episode of Making a Club Champion. In this episode, we're featuring a golfer called Jonathan Thompson, also known as Jigger on the European Tour. Standing at quite an impressive 6'8", or maybe even 6'9", Jonathan managed to claim his European Tour card in the 2017 dreaded European Q School Finals in Spain. This episode is very special to me personally, as I was fortunate enough to witness Jonathan achieve his tour card. What can only be considered as the biggest week of these golfers' lives, I was welcomed into Jonathan's team like family, as I ended up spending the whole week with Team Jigger, friends and manager, from warming up at the range in the morning to going out to dinner in the evening to the very last couple of holes where Jonathan needed 2 birdies out of the last 3 to claim his tour card. Spending time with them throughout the whole week and getting to realise what life is like behind the scenes made me realise of how much work goes into achieving your European Tour card. In this episode, we touch on how Jonathan prepared for a tournament that week, what life was like before getting his tour card to what life is like now on the European Tour, and how he is preparing for the rest of the season. As ever, thank you so much for tuning into Making a Club Champion, and I hope you enjoy this new episode featuring Jonathan Jigger Thompson. Jonathan, or should we say Jigger Thompson, welcome to the show.
Yeah, welcome. Yeah, it's great to hear from you again.
Yeah, it's been a very long time, and I think as we were just saying before we started recording this, it's probably coming up to a year since I first met you and your team at the European Tour School Q Finals over in Spain.
Yeah, I mean, how random. I think that's probably one of the great things about golf, isn't it? You meet so many people along the way, and you try and stay in touch and stuff. And we had some good fun that week, didn't we?
It was absolutely brilliant. Perhaps we should start there, and if we could go back to, of course, you qualified on the main tour, on the European Tour, and you got your tour card for 2018. I wonder if we could start how that journey actually started, and perhaps touch of where it really began.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you can sort of say, that you have a pretty. I mean, I stayed amateur for quite a while, and I believe that amateur golf gives you a lot of credentials to become a good player, but certainly, I think for me, obviously, I turned pro, and then I managed to get a win on the Europro Tour in sort of my first 4 starts. And I think then you really start to get a taste for actually, well, it's kind of real. This is a 3rd level tour, but I've just earned myself a few quid. And then you start getting excited. I certainly started getting excited to play golf again, whereas as an amateur, I was starting to get a little bit fed up, and constant relying on parents and this, that, and the other for, 10 a year, or I need to pay for this tournament. And kind of, you can get yourself slightly more on your own 2 feet, which I found, sort of, it helped me a lot and drove me forward a lot. And then I started in my first full year on the Europro, I actually started to, I struggled a little bit, really. I didn't really hit the ground running how I would have liked to. And then I started to play all of a sudden, just started to play some great golf, got my confidence levels up. And then I managed to, my management company managed to get me an invite into the Czech Masters, which is obviously a European Tour co-sanctioned event with the Challenge Tour. But I was sort of going into the final day, into the second to last group, and I had a shocker of a last round, but to actually put yourself in that position in your first event, biggest event you played in, actually made me realise, well, you are good enough to actually get your card. And we talked for so long about the year, basically at that level of, at that level of golf we're playing to Europro Challenge Tour, realistically, you're actually only really trying to prepare yourself for the end of the year. Obviously, it's nice to play a bit of good golf at the start of the year, but it all basically comes down to that sort of 1-2 month period at the end of the year where you're playing for your card. So that's where it all stemmed from for me. And then I managed to get an invite into Portugal Masters. I put a great showing in there, and then really believed that I could play on the European Tour, really.
So how does, obviously not many people sort of fast track their way onto the European Tour, especially from the Europro Tour. How sort of, what does the days of Europro look like for the average pro golfer on there compared to what life is like on the European Tour, just to give a contrast of what the difference is?
You sort of get in your car, you're there, you're turning up to a Europro Tour, you're getting in your car, you're driving to wherever you are in the UK. It's only 3 rounds of golf, so...
Is that over like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
No, it's not. No, it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the Europro. So it's all midweek. So you're always, you're always home for the weekend, pretty much, unless it's back-to-back tournaments and you might be in the same place, so you might stay for the weekend and start again. But the biggest difficulty I found with it is because I kind of missed the middle ground out a little bit. I only played sort of 4 Challenge Tour events. So the biggest difficulty I found with the fact of actually you're in a comfort zone on the Europro, even though the standard's actually very, very good. And I believe it's the best satellite tour you can play on. It's such a good feeder tour because the standard's so good. But at the same time, the Challenge Tour, I think, prepares you a little bit more. You have to become a little bit tougher and durable. Whereas I kind of missed that out. So you're always in the comfort blanket of, I've had a good week this week. I finished top 3. I picked a few quid up, covered my expenses. I'm home for the weekend. Whereas actually being on tour, certainly at the start of this year, it just hit me like a ton of bricks, really, because you're not just traveling Europe, you're in South Africa, you're in Mauritius, you're in the Middle East, and actually you're not coming home. You're not coming home, and you're a long, long way from home. And I didn't play great golf at the start of the year, so I missed a lot of cuts. So you've actually got a lot of spare time on your hands in a foreign country, a long way away from home, and I actually I didn't deal with that very good, and I would say that that's the massive stepping stone between the 2 tours. And obviously the standard, actually strength in depth's phenomenal on the main tour, but at the same time it's still achievable. So
I'll come back to the sort of what you do in your spare time after the rounds. But just to go back on the Europro Tour, I was wondering if you perhaps touch on, what it costs to enter these events and what kind of position do you need to sort of come in to make it worthwhile, or what's the reason why are people there as well?
Well, people play. I mean, I certainly played the Europro Tour with the view of, I ain't going to make any money, but the top 5 is really valuable because you are going to get a Challenge Tour card at the end of it. So that's why people are playing the Europro Tour, and that's especially for UK based people, it's actually a very, very easy tour to play on. When I say very easy tour to play on, it's very accessible to play on, but at the same time, it's very expensive. I mean, you've got I think the entry fee is around about $295 per event, pounds. And then you have your accommodation because you've effectively got to be there from Tuesday. I mean, I always like to go Monday. Fortunately for me, I managed to, I had a good start on the Europro. I won, so I managed to get a little bit of sponsorship, which helped me out enormously. But I do know guys on there that have sort of tried to self-fund. And actually it's very, very, very difficult. Because like I say, you've got your expenses, you've got your food. So realistically, you've got to be finishing. I think to make money, you on the Europro Tour, I would go as far as to say you need to finish 20th or above to even probably break even for the week.
Right.
Which is tough.
And as the only top 5 who get the card towards the Challenge Tour.
the top 5 on the order of merit get the Challenge Tour status. Yeah.
So how long did you last on the Europro Tour before you escalated to getting these challenge invites?
Well, I turned pro very late in the year because I was so fed up with amateur golf, and I turned pro. So my management group got me 4 invites, and it's at the very end of the season. So I missed 2 cuts. I finished, let's say, 35th, and then I won one. And obviously, the showing there gave willing to get me starts on the Challenge Tour. So I basically got Challenge Tour starts right from the go the following year. But the problem is, because the Europro Tour is so top heavy, as in prize fund and everything else, when you start playing both tours, and if you're only playing average, you could be playing well but average at the same time. You're not really going to progress unless you win a couple of times. So I actually shot myself in the foot that year, I feel, last year, because I played some of the Challenge Tour events, and it's that's 4 or 5 valuable events towards the order of merit, and I ended up finishing 8th in the order of merit and no further forward. So it was all down to Q School for me.
So what was the mindset going into Q School? Because you didn't you qualify from the very first stage at the regionals?
I actually missed out again through the tour. There's some sort of ranking. I actually missed out on getting to second stage and skipping first stage by £38.
Right.
Which is just mind blowing, really, and frustrating. But the aim with Q School to me was just to try and get to final stage and see how it went, and just try and make the cut, because the progression for me for 1 year, I set my stall out at the start of last year to get a Challenge Tour card. That was my ultimate goal, because I feel if you can move off the Europro Tour in 1 to 2 to 3 years, you've done very well. Because, like I say, the standard at the top end of that tour is very good, and it's massively underestimated as well. So, for me, the Challenge Tour was the goal, really. Yeah.
So I just wonder if you could explain how the qualifying works for people perhaps who don't know. So there's a regional qualifier for the European Tour finals, and you have to go through that one, and then what happens after there?
So then you go, then there you get, I can't remember how many allocated slots there are at regionals, and then you get allocated a slot to go to the second stage of Q School, where there's already people in second stage, people who have even lost the card on the main tour the year before, they might have to go back to second stage, people who have skipped first stage through order of merits that they're on money lists and all the rest of it. So then you get allocated, I think there's 4 golf courses in the second stage.
In the UK?
No, they're all in Europe.
Oh, all in Europe, okay.
They're all in Europe.
And how many people go through each one of those stages to the final?
Oh, you're asking me a good question there, because I can't actually remember. I want to say that there's maybe 25 at first stage.
Okay.
And there's maybe 15 at second stage at each allocated destination, because I remember actually at second stage I was in an 8-man playoff for 3 spots.
Right. What was that like?
I've never been in a playoff in my life before, so it was probably one of the most nervous I've ever been. But I actually managed to birdie the first hole, and I was automatically straight through. So just fantastic.
So you got an 8-man playoff. You all tee off at the same time for how many spots? Is it just?
They actually made it into 2 4-balls, and I was the second 4-ball to tee off.
Right.
So it's even worse, really. I guess you're desperate to get off. You've got no idea what the group in front have done, and just crazy, really.
And how many spots were going out of the 8?
It was 8 players for 3 spots, but I actually think it might have been 8 players for 4 spots. Can't exactly remember because to be honest, my head was just so. You don't know what you're doing really. All you can do is just try and make the best score possible down that hole and hope you don't have to go again, really.
So you qualified at the second stage that was Spain.
It was in Spain, yeah. El Soler,
and that's an 8-man playoff. So that takes you to the final stage. And what are the sort of emotions and thoughts going into the final stage? And how many? What's the goal?
Well, again, emotions. Obviously, emotions are running high. Confidence levels are actually running quite high, and it's like I said previously when we started the conversation, I strongly believe that all players who haven't got the European Tour card should all be building up towards the end of the year, because realistically, that's when it's going to count. Unless you've had an exceptional start to whatever tour you're playing on, then it might not count as much. But realistically, everyone's aiming to get a European Tour card, and that comes at the end of the year. So emotions for me were running very high, but I also knew that it was going to be a good week, because I knew that my girlfriend was coming out, my dad was coming out, a couple of friends were coming out. So it was kind of going to be a week of, I've got so far, let's enjoy it and just try and make the cut, the cut after 4 rounds, because once you've done that, you are guaranteed the Challenge Tour card.
So just for people who don't know, there's how many rounds?
There's 6 rounds. There's 6 rounds of golf at final stage of Q School.
And how many European Tour cards are given out?
25.
25. And Challenge Tour cards, if you just make the final last 2 days?
So I think there's slightly more. I wouldn't be able to tell you the exact number on that one, to be honest.
Right.
But there's definitely slightly more than 25.
So what was the strategy for sort of day one? And, it's a long week. You've got players, you've got I think there was something like 12 European Tour champions on when we were there.
Yeah, I think so.
So you've got a depth of some of the best players all around the world trying to compete for this spot. What is the strategy going into the week, or even just that first round?
Yeah, I mean, the strategy going into that week for us was certainly just to always try and keep yourself in it, because it's a marathon, basically. It's not a sprint, and you don't want to have you're just trying to just keep churning out the pars. And to be honest, you have to be so patient with your golf game. It's beyond belief, because you physically just, at the start of the week, you're actually not thinking about the end goal, because you're thinking, wow, I've actually got 6 rounds of golf to play here. So let's just, take one round at a time and just keep plodding it round. And basically that was my strategy, which fortunately paid off. But, I think the advice to give anyone going into Q School, the final stage, is, like I say, is not even to try and think, you just need to try and think, well, how am I going to get through this round, by just eliminating mistakes, really. I think that's the mindset, if I have to go back to Q School, or if I do, then that would be the same mindset, 1,000%.
And was any times during sort of the first round where you caught yourself in a bit of trouble, and how did you sort of handle that situation? What could have been the first couple of rounds?
I actually didn't the first couple of rounds. It was almost uncanny, really, because I played great.
Yeah.
It was I think it was in the 4th or 5th round. It was the 5th round, because I'd made the cut on one of the holes where I was cruising. And it was a bit of a nemesis hole for me. I can't remember the actual hole. And I think I made like double or triple bogey. And then, that is a big killer blow. It hurts the score, hurts your position. But again, it was just like, what's done is done. We've got 6 more holes to play, whatever it was, and we've got another round tomorrow. So just let's get in the least shots we possibly can. And
after each one of these rounds at Q School, I was lucky to spend a bit of time with you and your team. I was wondering perhaps you could touch on, how do you How do you kill the downtime? What do the afternoons or evenings look like? How are you spending them?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, for me, I was fortunate that I'd got sort of my team out there. I got my manager, caddy. I got my dad. I got my girlfriend. I got my dad, his mate. We'd all sort of got an apartment. So it was really good that we were all sort of in an apartment, in and around each other together. And it wasn't like, your normal tournaments where you're sort of going out every night, you eat, you have a drink or whatever it may be to wind down, and then you sort of hit bed. But there's a lot of time to kill at Q School in between rounds, because obviously there's just a genuine lot of time to kill the whole sort of 8-10 days you're there. So for me, it was really nice to have sort of family there, and we kind of, we cooked in most nights and just sort of basically did normal things, actually probably what we'd do at home, which was really nice. He certainly made the week more comfortable for me, for sure, because I just previous to that, I think I'd just done something. It was like my 9th week away from home, because obviously I was playing Europro, and then I played first stage Q School, second stage Q School, then I played the Europro Grand Final in between, and so it was just really nice to just have a bit of home comfort around me, I guess.
And going into the last day, what were you on the cut mark, or how did it look of you getting your spot for the top 25 places?
Going into the final day, I don't think I was in the top 25. Actually, again, that's a great question, because I don't think, obviously you're thinking about it, but for me, like I say, I'd got my Challenge Tour cards signed, sealed, delivered. So my achievement for the year was sort of done. But I also, you sort of saying to yourself, you're saying that to other people, but then deep down you're saying to yourself, well, no, hang on a minute, come on. There's still something huge on the line here. So a good round of golf, you can do it. And the last round was tedious round of golf for me. There was nothing, just nothing would happen. And I remember in the last 6 holes, I had a birdie put on every single hole. I had a couple of lengthy ones, to be fair, but I had like 13, 14, 15, I had 3 great chances, and I left every single one of them in the jaws, just short, like literally a roll short, smack in the middle of the hole. And it was one of those rounds that was just so testing, because I just couldn't buy anything. And then I did the exact same thing on 16, and I'm like, this is brutal. This is just not going to happen.
Which was a par 5, I'm sorry.
It was a par 5, yeah, water all the way down the left. Very real tough hole. And then I actually said, I remember walking off the green, and sort of my girlfriend was there and my manager was there, and I said, what do I need? And he basically just said, 1's got a chance, but 2 birdies, I think I'd say you're safe. So I was like, right. I always remember the 17th, it's actually quite a tough par 3. Pin was tucked sort of middle right over these big bunkers, but the wind was sort of howling out the right, and the only way you could get it close to the pin is by basically in a strong cut against the wind and holding it, which under those circumstances is a pretty difficult one to pull off. And I said to Will, my caddy at the time, I said, I'm gonna have to just try and pull it off. And I hit a great shot to 20 feet. And I said to him on the green, I said, there's no way on this earth I'm leaving this putt short.
Yeah.
And I hit this putt, and it was basically going 10 feet past, but it jammed the back of the hole and dropped. So just emotions then are just through the roof, big fist pump. Sort of everyone who was watching me screamed around the green. And I just the one thing I remember about Q School is that the tee shot on 18. the adrenaline was just phenomenal after holding that putt. I've never felt like that before, ever. I was just, my heart was racing. I'm just absolutely buzzing. And then actually I've got to hit a difficult tee shot. And I said, we'd sort of hit 3-wood all week. And then Will said to me, he said, no, I said, we're going to have to hit 5-wood here. Otherwise, you're so pumped. You could hit this, you run out into the water long, and par 5 finish hitting a 5-wood off the tee. I'm thinking, but I just absolutely nutted this thing. Like frozen rope.
I was standing behind you, and I remember this ball taking off. I was, dear God, that's it really did take off like a Concorde.
Yeah, it was brilliant. And then I was in prime position to go and make birdie again. I mean, it's still a very difficult shot to pull off with water left and a bunker right and OB right at that. But I'd got a 5-iron in my hand, and again, the kind of no thoughts going on in my head. I just remember being quite blank, and I just hit this 5-iron, and it was just picture perfect again. Well, we actually thought it was short, if I'm being completely honest, because it's into a bit of hidden dip, the 18th green, from where you hit your second shot. And there wasn't really any applaud, but I think everyone was like, because obviously it was all my team around me. I think everyone, because they knew what was going on, and I think they were that shocked what's happened, they just couldn't applaud because, my dad was in bits, Liv was in bits, my girlfriend, and I think it was just crazy. So we got down there, and I've hit this 5-iron to 10 feet. And Will just said to me, he said, you've got 2 putts, so take 2 putts. And I just literally left it on the lip of the hole for eagle. Which is just, and then it really does you've got to try and sink in that you got European Tour card, really.
What happened next?
Well, what happened next? So we shook hands. My girlfriend came on. She was crying. I had tears in my eyes. Then my dad came on. He can't speak. He's hysterical. I'm trying to say, Dad, come on, you need to get off the green now. There's people waiting to hit the shots behind, and everyone was just so happy, including myself. But actually, I didn't really know what to do. So I actually walked away from everyone to go and sign my card because I just needed that little bit of time. And I remember actually walking. It was, it's uncanny again, really, because my playing partners, they'd already gone, and I've walked off down this little path to the recorder's hut just on my own, thinking, wow, is this real? Might have shed a little tear or two myself just walking down there, and then you've got to get your act together again because you know that there might be an interview or you can actually have to speak to people. So it's the emotions it was just incredible, really. I'll never forget it till the day I die.
And if I remember rightly, there were several interviews almost literally after you signed your scorecard with not just you but your dad and sort of everyone involved. Is that right? Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of, I think it was a great story, and just that's kind of what the press love, and it was quite full on actually straight away. But I think in a good way, because you haven't got time to think. You just bang, 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 bang. You're just doing it and it's done. So I think in a good, it's a good thing, really.
Mm. And I know you suffered with an illness when you were growing up as a child. Is that right?
Yeah, I when I was 7, I was diagnosed with leukemia, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, which is the most aggressive type you can have. So I went through basically 5 years of chemotherapy and 5 years of just hell, really. But what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and I kind of you have to draw on that sometimes a little bit, really, when you're sort of away from home. And I am a bit of home bird, so when you're away from home and you
as most of you Northerners are.
It can get you down a little bit sometimes, but you have to think, well, certainly been in worse places than this before, and there's kids out there and people out there that are in worse places than you right now, so you just got to give yourself a bit of kick up the backside, really.
So when those times do get sort of down and difficult for you, what is the self-talk that you may say to yourself?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's pretty similar to what I just said, really. Just like I say, there's certainly worse things happening in the world. There's certainly worse places to be in the world. And, we're sat there bloody moaning about, well, the food could be crap in the players' lounge or something. But,
right.
Like we're probably getting treated like kings. And it's very easy to get yourself in a rut and become a moaner. And, you don't want to become that person, really. And you've got to say to yourself, look, I need to, there's certainly worse things happening right now than you being playing in a European Tour event and you've had a bad round of golf. You know what I mean?
Mm. Well, I think actually one of the highlights I remember of actually when you got your card, I don't know if you even would know this, or because it's a sort of an observation from someone outside of your team, but you were very, I'd say, gracious in the way you won, and you weren't actually, you didn't, out of the, of everyone who was there, I think you were just sort of almost gracious in winning as it would be in defeat, and I found that quite admirable about how you went about yourself at those last final moments.
Yeah, I think anything in life, like I say, I've been quite humbled, really, in obviously what I went through as a child. So, getting a European Tour card is basically a dream. But at the same time, I actually knew that I've achieved one dream, but now it's time to actually start a proper job. This is no messing around. You're on the European Tour, and actually, it ain't going to be easy. Which it hasn't been easy. And I think it was one great bit of advice from the manager at the time. He said, "Look," he said, "I'm not going to beat about the bush here. You've got your European Tour card, but you've got your low end European Tour card, and it is going to be tough, but it is achievable." And I'd already prepared myself in the best possible way I could, because it is tough. And you've got to understand that, yes, you have got your European Tour card, but you're playing in the lower end events, because that's the category that you get through Q School. So you've got to really step it up a gear, and that's the one of the reasons why that you can't just think, oh, sit on your laurels and I've got my European Tour card now. Actually, in actual fact, it's a job, and you've got to step up a notch, really.
I was wondering, perhaps people who actually don't know, is the whole category system. I think most people may think that, once they get, top 25 of Q School, you've got full rights to the tour. You just rock up to the, BMW Open at Wentworth and the likes of that. But it's a little different.
It is a hell of a lot different, yeah. And obviously that's what a lot of people think. And actually, before I went to Q School, that's what I thought, to be quite honest. But no, you don't. You get category 17, which is, the lowest category on tour. And you don't, you sort of don't, there's only the sort of top 10 of the category maybe get into the Rolex Series event. So you are playing for your European Tour card, but it's certainly not a full European Tour card. You can't just turn up and play everything, because sometimes your category won't get you in everything.
And once you got the tour card, I mean, you're hitting the ground running, aren't you? I mean, almost the week after you're trying to get into the first event.
So I think basically I came home from Q school sort of had a week or maybe just slightly longer than a week, and then we flew to Mauritius straight away, and then we flew from Mauritius straight to South Africa. And then we sort of you're very close to Christmas then, so you come home and I think you have 2 or 3 weeks over the Christmas period. 3 weeks I think it was, and then you go in again straight away to South Africa for a couple of events. So you bang right there. I mean, you get your tour card and you have no choice in the fact that you've got to go and got to play.
Yeah. How did the first sort of couple events kick off for you?
Not great, but I think having done such a long stretch of golf before the final stage of Q school, then getting my card, sort of emotions running so high. I actually think I was so drained for the first couple of events. I was so tired. I remember in Mauritius in South Africa, I just got a horrendous cold. And it's boiling in Mauritius. It was like 34 degrees, but I just genuinely just very run down. But I think that was just purely and simply just exhaustion, really, because obviously, like I say, I didn't get a great deal of time at home. And actually when I was home, because of my story and my background, I had a hell of a lot of sort of interviews to do, TV to do, actually at home. So that week before I went away was just full on every single day with some filming or interviews or phone interviews. So for me, I didn't set off the ground running on the European tour, but I think, like I say, that was down to exhaustion. And maybe if I was in that position again, I might have done it slightly different, but we're all learning. So. And
there was the European Tour put in like a re-ranking system, is that right? I was wondering if you could touch on that and what.
So basically, there's 2 re-ranks in our category within the season, and it's basically to give players a chance who are lower down the ranking to re-rank higher on basically money earned. So I actually haven't had a very good start in the first half of the year on the tour, so my re-rank, I basically stayed the same at like 26th card. So yeah, basically that's what the re-rank system does. It gives the players opportunity to move up and down the re-rank within the year. But there's 2 re-ranks and both re-ranks have gone now. So for me, it's just playing what I get in, everything that I get in, and try and go from there and play some good golf.
And perhaps people who don't know, the ranking system is all about, whatever ranking category you have is the sort of how you get into the bigger events where the bigger prize funds are, and competing against sort of a better ranking points. Is that correct?
Yeah. So basically, like if you get your tour card through Challenge Tour, then I would say you're probably going to be able to get in everything. Apart from maybe just a few events, but this year I think they've probably got in pretty much everything apart from the Middle East Swing, what was at the start of the year. So really the category from there and above is where you want to be. Obviously, you further down the line you like to be in a winners category, but the Q school category is certainly not the be all and end all of what people maybe think it is, for sure.
What's sort of, now you've done a year or coming up to a year on tour, what's been sort of the greatest lesson you've learned having had this year on the European tour?
I think that certainly one of the greatest lessons you learn is you sort of learn that you've got to fend for yourself. Travel can be a bit of a killer at times, and you've got to just learn how to deal with it. But at the same time, I think you kind of you've got to seize the moment a little bit when you're out there. But at the same time, I think for me, certainly this first half of the year when things aren't going great, I mean, I have specifically overworked myself at events. So by the time, the second round there where the cut is, I've sort of been knackering myself and becoming quite tired because I felt like I needed to do something extra to what I was doing a year ago, when in actual fact I don't. But it's very easy to become, to think like that, should I say, because you think, European Tour, I've got to do something extra to play better. But actually you haven't. You're there for a reason. And that's certainly my biggest lesson so far this year about myself, is actually that I need to just get to tournaments and just do what I need to do to play well and not overwork myself. And that goes for when you're playing great and when you're not playing great as well. Some people say, if you hit the ground running and everything was smooth ride and everything else, you might think, oh yeah, I can do a bit extra, this, that, and the other. But actually, learn what works for you and do what works for you. I see that in a few players that got the card at Q School, and I definitely saw it in myself, which will change as of next week.
Why did you say as of next week?
Because that's my first event back after a 4-week break. So I'll be playing the Porsche European Open. But that for me is sort of definitely what I will change for the end of the year, for this sort of last end of the year, is to not overwork myself at events.
And would you see that sort of characteristic with some of the seasonal pros who've been on the tour for sort of 20 years, that they have this, they just go about the business the way they do, and they just keep to their own sort of Nick Faldo sort of mentality? And
absolutely, I mean, that's one thing that sort of I took a bit of a step back and watched, is that he's obviously, and actually, I played with a couple of guys who have been out there quite a long time, and it's certainly what they say as well, and they don't do it. They don't do it. I mean, some guys, so say for instance, I'll give you a bit of an instant, like if I've done 3 weeks on the bounce and I'm doing my 4th event, I'd still try and play 18 holes of golf in practice, even if I'm absolutely knackered. But the guys who have probably been on there a long time, if they're knackered, then they might only just do 9 holes and make sure it's a good 9 holes preparation, do a little bit of practice, rest and recover, and do it that way. So it's probably a little bit of an example right there, really.
I can't remember. I was paired with one of your friends, Joe Dean, and we were playing with another northerner chap who gets taught by Pete Cowan. I've lost his name. He's been on tour for 20 plus years. He's got silver hair. That doesn't help.
Foster?
Yeah, Mark Foster.
Yeah.
And I don't know, how old is Mark now? Must be...
Good question. I don't know.
Probably in his 40s?
Yeah, I would say he's in his 40s, yeah.
But he really impressed me about exactly what you just said, in terms of he just seemed like he wasn't really fazed by anyone. He seemed to go about his own business.
Yeah.
Play his game when he was out on the golf course.
Yeah. I would massively agree with that. And actually, it's funny you should say that, because this year, I've got to know Mark really well, and he's sort of, how can I say it? I would say he sort of took me under his wing a little bit out on tour, and which he actually, he didn't need to do. And he's him that sort of, talked to me, and, we've had some pretty good long conversations in depth about preparation and stuff. And he just said, it was one of his observations that I was overworking myself as well. And Mark, like I say, he basically he's been on and off tour for 19 years, which is a long time. So he's got a lot of experience under his belt, and he's also got a lot of experience of I guess seeing young lads like me get my card, and also seeing the very best do well. So he's kind of got the best of both worlds, and he's got some great knowledge, and he has been very, very good to me this year.
What other players on tour have you played with that really impress you about how they go about their business?
Well, again, it's difficult really, because sort of it seemed to be this year that I've been paired with the same few people sort of quite a few times in and around the same category and stuff like that. But I got drawn with Lee Slattery in Madrid, and again, sort of just great knowledge on preparing for tournaments, and obviously he's been out on tour for a long time as well. And they all say the same thing, it's very easy to get your talk on and think you've got to do something different when you actually haven't. But Lee, again, just does what he needs to do, and he knows what works for him and does it, and that's him done really, which again it's great advice.
Mm. And you mentioned that you had these last 4 weeks off. What's the average day look like for you when you're perhaps at home getting ready for a tournament?
These past 4 weeks have been really, really good for me. I've sort of done I've been sort of back in the gym, done quite a lot of cardio work. So I also know that I've got to be very fit going into these next sort of 9-10 weeks or whatever it may be. And then so it's sort of the gym. I like to do quite a lot of swimming, and then a typical day like today. So we went to the golf club, me and my caddy, and we warmed up. We went and played 9 holes, and then afterwards we did some short game drills and some putting drills. So typical day of just basically practicing and also preparing for some tournament golf. And to be fair, it's been so nice, because obviously the weather at home has just been absolutely fantastic. So it's been so easy to just go about your business how you would like to, really. It's been great.
What kind of short game drills do you do? Perhaps you could touch on the specifics of them.
Yeah, so putting drills, I sort of like to do. I like to I have like a putting mirror and a string line on a straight putt. So that's sort of my technical work. And then I like to do like a spiral, but it's not just a typical spiral where you do 1 to 15 foot. I like to do like just stick tee pegs in randomly around a hole from like 3 feet to 15 feet all around. And then I actually did go around once, obviously, but then I never hit the same putt again. So I'll move the tee pegs again, just so that it sort of makes me reread the putt, and you're actually not, it's what you would be doing on the golf course. You never hit the same putt twice. So that's what I like to try and do in my putting practice. And then chipping practice, I sort of do like 8 stations, drop 3 balls down.
At each station?
At each station, yeah. Maybe pick 3-4 different flags, and then I make sure I've got all my wedges with me and assess the lie and just play the shot, basically. And never try and just get a bag of balls and hit the same chip 50 times, because it's not what you're doing on the golf course. These past 4 weeks has been really quite performance driven for me. Obviously, there's a time and a place where you might have to hit 50 chip shots in a row if you're working on your technique. But I'm not working on my technique right now. I'm just ticking the technique over. It's about being ready to go and perform for me.
So you're holding out these chip shots with your putter as well? And
no, we hit the shot, and we just see where it lands, and sort of just giving myself feedback all the time on, well, did I play that right for that particular lie? Could I have played it any better? And then hit the next one.
Do you track any of your performances on any data software or any tools? Or
no, I don't know.
You just keep it's all.
Yeah, I would say I'm quite a. I like to keep it all really quite natural, because that's the way I play golf. I don't particularly look into stats probably as much as I should do, but I think again there's a real time and a place for stats, and stats can be also massively blown out of proportion. You've got to really know what you're doing with stats, and sometimes for a simple mind like mine, they just yeah. They sort of baffle me a little bit. So I try and leave that to my coaches and sort of my team around me, to be honest.
Well, exactly what you're referring to back just a couple of minutes ago, finding what works for you.
Yeah, exactly.
How many times do you see the coach? Who are you working with currently?
Well, I've been working with Pete Cowan now for probably sort of last year, toward the end of last year on Europro. He sort of took me under his wing a little bit. I've always seen Pete's staff at his range, but he really started to help me out. And then obviously I got my tour card and we just carried it on. And he's just been so good to me and just helped me out massive amounts, really. So I try and see Pete basically when I can, because Pete obviously is always one of the best coaches in the world. So he's obviously with the best players in the world, and they're not at tournaments that I'm at. So he's been to a couple of tournaments this year, what I've been at. But apart from that, he's sort of been when I'm at home and he's at home. We've got together and maybe done a weekend's work or a few hours here, a few hours there. So, and then I've been working quite closely with Mike Hansky, one of Phil Kenyon's assistants with the putting. Mm-hmm. That was always kind of my Achilles heel, really, in golf. But working with him and his expertise, I really think that I've turned the corner with the putter, which is quite nice, quite a nice feeling for me.
What were the sort of biggest differences or improvements in your putting that have really propelled it forward?
It's amazing, really, because, like I say, statistically wise and all that, I was so quite anal about my putting, but it was always because my putting kind of let me down. So I massively overanalyzed it. I was always quite rigid. I used a line on the ball. And I always had the mindset of, you've got to be doing this, you've got to be doing that, and everything else. And actually, we've gone away completely from using the line on the ball and just visualizing the putt, visualizing the apex of the putt, where I think it's going to drop in from, and where I think it, the sort of the main break is in the putt, and actually just getting over the putt and hitting the putt. And probably some of the best advice I've ever had with putting came from Mike. And he went, because I was always like, I'm always missing on the low side. It's terrible. And this, that, and the other. And he turned around and said, Jig, as long as you pick the line, you hit the putt and you hit the putt where you want to hit it. A miss is a miss. If you miss it high or low, a miss is a miss. It doesn't matter. And I thought, do you know what? That's just great. If you say, if you say to yourself, well, I want to hit a 7-iron draw here into this back left flag, and you hit a 7-iron and you push it slightly into the middle of green, it goes 15 foot, you think, yeah, it's not great, but it still worked out all right. Whereas with putting, because it was always my Achilles heel, I massively overanalyzed it, and I was always putting so much pressure on my putting. But right now, I'm really enjoying putting again, and I'm actually enjoying going to practice my putting, which is great.
Which sounds like almost like there were two contrasts to your game right there, when you were like the putting's become very analytical and sort of almost stat-like, and your game is very all feel and simple. You've almost deloaded all that technical information to your coaches, and now it seems to be more on level, would you say?
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, it was all like, Mike, I'm every time I went to see him, I'm like, Mike, I'm flushing it, but not all in putts and this, that, and the other. And I'm doing this, and I knew everything about my putting, literally everything, every stat, everything, this, that, and the other. And he said, well, what are your stats with your 50, 60 green? I said, got no idea. And it's like, yeah, well, you've got a real seriously good point there. So that's, again, becoming obsessed with something and overanalyzing it. And it can actually put a lot of pressure on yourself.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. I
want to be respectful of your time, so I will sort of close this out, as this has been absolutely fantastic. But I was wondering if you could perhaps touch what was the biggest highlight, and let's also go for the low light of, your first year on tour.
I think, again, the biggest highlight was for me this year. I played some amazing golf in Madrid. I got to, I think I was fourth or something after day 1 or 2, and I was playing fantastic. But I never pushed forward. I never driven forward that week. I kind of never got a break, or and I never actually, like I say, I never really pushed forward as well as I probably could have. But sort of the lows are, when you're missing cuts again, like I say, at the start of the year or whatever, and you're miles away from home, and it can be quite difficult at times, and it can be very lonely. And that's what people don't see of the tour. You spend a hell of a lot of time on your own in that hotel room or wherever you are, because there's a hell of a lot of time to kill. So I think that's certainly one of the lows, but at the same time, those lows are never ever going to change, because that's just part and parcel of what we do. And like I say, it's for me about trying to turn every negative into a positive, and saying, well, no, there's certainly worse things to be doing, and actually this is the dream. You're doing something for your job that you absolutely love doing, which is correct. So sometimes you just need to give yourself a bit of a kick up the arse, really. And that's just top and bottom of it.
Fantastic. You're how tall are you, Jigs? You're 6'9". 6'9". Okay. So what are some of the things you travel with that perhaps some people may not know, that sort of make your life a little easier, or any?
Well, actually, I don't think anything makes my life easier with traveling. That's for sure, being this big. But no, I'm sort of quite generic, same as the other guys. Foam roller, some TheraBand, just to try and keep the body moving and loose as you possibly can. See physio as much as I can, get massages, just from purely and simply because I'm forever in cramped space. So I do stiffen up probably more than some other people would. Travel's a nightmare for me, but I'm afraid that's genetics, and I'm 6'9", so I've, again, got to deal with it,
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, I haven't actually, I forgot to tell you this, but at the end of each show, we get the guest to give an action challenge to the listeners. So I have to put you on the spot here. I should have warned you. But what is an action challenge where perhaps something you believe in that you may do daily, weekly? It doesn't have to be around golf. It could be maybe outside of golf, that has had a good impact or positive impact on your life. Like one for me, for example, or perhaps another. It's like someone said they meditate, or I think Phil Kenyon's was that he reads a lot. So it could.
This is going to sound probably really weird, but I think for me is when I'm away is actually making sure that I have my downtime, and my downtime is actually probably chilling out in some sort of bar, people watching with a glass of red wine. I love my red wine, and that's actually kind of what I enjoy doing. I don't, some people may have music or, like you say, meditation or reading, but for me, it's just not on my phone and speaking to somebody through a screen or whatever it may be, and just actually have my time.
Fantastic. That's a fantastic one. Love it. And do you have a particular favourite red?
I'm quite a big fan of a nice Malbec.
Good mile back, okay. Are you having just the one, or are you having a...
Well, I mean, it depends how bad the golf's been, but
Right.
no, it's I try and limit it.
Fantastic. No, that's fantastic.
No.
One I think many people will take you up on offer. Well, this has been absolutely fantastic. I think we'll wrap it up because it's I've taken an hour of your time, and it's been absolutely great. We'll have to get is Will still your caddy?
No, he's not, unfortunately.
Well, we'll still get Will on anyway.
Yeah, get him. Yeah, get him up.
Who's your who have you got now on the bag?
I've actually got a real good friend of mine on the bag. Chris Dennis, his name is. He's a PGA coach. He's a good friend of mine. He's worked out in Dubai for a few years, and he came home, and it's just quite fitting, really. So he's coming on the bag, yeah.
Oh, great. Well, I know Will was a huge impact helping you getting on tour. So we'll perhaps have to do a caddy podcast featuring lots of top caddies. Why
not?
Fantastic. Well, best of luck for the rest of the season.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll be sure to keep an eye on you. Is there anywhere we can... Do you have a website or people can follow you online or follow your Twitter or Facebook?
Say Twitter, yeah.
Okay, and what's your Twitter handle?
My Twitter is... I think it's just Jigger_Thompson.
Fantastic. I'll find you and I'll put it on this show notes and episode. Jigger, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And as I said, really go for it the rest of the season. Wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you very much. Been my pleasure.
Cool. Right, we'll catch you soon.
Yeah. See you later.
Cheers, John. Bye.
Bye.
Hope you enjoyed that new episode of MakingAClubChampion.com. If you'd like even more from the episode, perhaps some actionable lessons, or listen to another episode featuring another guest, head over to MakingAClubChampion.com, where you'll find all of the links from this episode, all of the show notes, the actionable tools, strategies to make your game even more effective. As ever, thank you again for listening to another episode of Making a Club Champion, and hope to catch you on the next one.